Hello there. Have you ever wondered what it'd be like if a zombie apocalypse happened while you're in the shower? Project Zomboid happens to have a scenario for just this case. Project Zomboid is an apocalyptic zombie survival game set just days after a mysterious and sudden outbreak of an infection that caused almost everyone to turn into shambling zomboids. While you, the player, are immune to this initial event, you are not immune to bites. Just a single little nibble from one of the locals, and it's game over. As you may have heard, Project Zomboid has recently updated to Build 42 with an unstable beta branch release, and I thought it would be a fun idea to go back into Build 41 with some mods and attempt one of the most infamous scenarios this game has. A really seedy day. In this scenario, you follow the shower and bust your ass, you're blind drunk, down the cold, and, oh yeah, there's a horde of zombies rapidly approaching your location. In short, it's not looking good. With that said, meet Olin Ridgway. Olin moonlighted as a burglar, but he wasn't very good at it on account of being physically comparable to a bowl of warm jello. Unfortunately for him, he gets to be our shower victim. So, let's get steamy. My house is on fire. There's glass in my groin. Good news, I have some canned food in this cupboard, so I grab them and then deal with the glass shard lodged in my peanuts. I can pull down a curtain to make bandages to staunch the bleeding. Bad news, there's already a zomboid at my window. To have any chance of getting out of this house, I need to deal with a zomboid and steal their shoes, since I wasn't wearing any on, the account of being in the shower and all. No shoes would mean I would cut my feet up walking around outside. There is an apocalypse going on. After beating the shit out of that zomboid and yoinking their shoes, the rest of the horde started showing up. I managed to get to the neighboring house and inside, found a lonely zomboid that I could dispatch and completely strip of threads. At this point, the hammer was really starting to come down, and this house was also catching on fire. So it's time to get the hell out of Dodge and run into the woods to hopefully find safety. After speed-walling my way into the woods, I needed to stop for a breather and check to see if any of the zomboids were following me. 2 were, and I needed to deal with them then and there. Otherwise I'd become too exhausted to keep moving. The tactic was that if I could push one down, I could stand on top of them and keep them pinned while dealing with the other. After a pretty pathetic fight, I won. I celebrated the victory by checking their pockets and found this cool watch. At least I could tell the time now. After taking that breather and recovering some stamina, I pushed onward, finally reaching my destination. A farmhouse that should be far enough away from the cities to safely hang out in, at least long enough to recover from that glass wound. I'd have to secure the farmhouse first, as there's at least one zomboid inside, so I checked the shed first, found a hoe, and then proceeded to check out the farmhouse. I had to be extra careful, so I checked everything on the first floor, then I checked upstairs, and finally found the zomboid that was banging on the door, and dispatched it. Thankfully there was only the one, and I was able to settle in. I headed back to the kitchen to sum up my supplies. We had several cans of food from the initial house, as well as a few extra cans and some pasta that was in the farmhouse kitchen. I knew I couldn't actually eat any on the account of not being able to open the damn cans. I had to find something to open them with, otherwise I'd start starving before too long. For now, I need to rest and recover from that glass injury, so I passed the time checking around the farmhouse, doing some light exercises, and using this radio I found in the living room to scan the radio waves for any signs of life. While the radio waves were silent, I could hear the occasional gunshot somewhere out in the distance. I couldn't go check it out, but the more concerning issues of the zomboids would. Eventually, zomboids were going to show up here and notice me, and I needed to recover before that happened. After a few days of resting, I couldn't wait anymore. I had to go out searching for additional supplies, or at least a way to use the stuff I already had. There was some sheds a short jog to the north, which I hoped would have at least some tools and maybe not that many zomboids. Boy was I wrong. The place was crawling with the things, but I was able to outpace them in a brisk walk and lured some of them away into the trees. I was able to dispatch a few of the stragglers with the hoe, though it ended up breaking. Good news is I managed to find a screwdriver as well as a few other tools. Bad news, a zomboid broke through the window and tried to grab me, though thankfully it wasn't able to do more than rip my pants. After a short rest in the shed, I hurried back to the farmhouse. With the screwdriver, I was able to actually open the cans and get to the food inside. With the stash I had, I should be able to hold out for at least a few days. I will definitely lose some weight, but that's not too much of an issue. At least, not yet. Since I was looking at some time on my hands, I thought it would be a nice idea to craft a stone hammer, so I could start dismantling some of the furniture for materials to fashion makeshift weapons, or at least some basic fortifications. Crafting one would just take a stone and a stick, which would seem easy to find via foraging. Apparently, it's a lot more complicated than that, and instead of finding a stick or a stone, I found an entire unopened package of brown sugar. Huh. Oh, and a rock. No stick though. Weather conditions were making foraging tough, so I decided to call it for the day and work on those exercises. This would be a long process, but I had already hit my first milestone for fitness, now being slightly less akin to a bowl of warm jello. After a couple of days of working out, I noticed that my glass wound had finally healed. With that, we could walk around at full speed instead of limping around, which was vital for being able to move around the zomboids. With our mobility restored, I knew I needed to set out to scavenge more supplies. Our pile of stuff was dwindling, and before long it would be gone. To prepare, I really wanted to make that hammer so I could at least fashion some sort of actual weapon, and tried foraging again. 2 steps out of the front door, I found not 1, but 2 sticks. Marvelous. I made not only a stone hammer, but a stone axe as well. I then proceeded to smash most of the furniture in the house like an angry child with his dad's hammer, but did manage to get a few planks and nails as well as my first point in the carpentry skill. Very nice. With the materials at hand, I could craft a weapon of mass destruction, a plank with an empty tin can tied to it. Now would be a good time to talk about the plan. Alright, so the plan is, we're kinda sorta here-ish, and kinda sorta over there-ish should be a logging mill or something. It's large, industrial, and maybe not packed with zomboids like the towns are. It should have some decent hardware like axes and shovels, along with some potential for seeds that I could plant for long-term food. The problem is, even if there is not that many zomboids, just a few is enough to get me, which is why we're going to go at night and be sneaky. So, we take a nap, eat our last can of corn, and under the cover of darkness, head off to the logging mill. However, I did not account for the fact that the entire stretch of woods from here to there would be absolutely infested. Oh, and being out at night? Complete mistake. I'm completely knocked off course, and while fleeing through the woods, scratched my shin pushing through a tree. So now I'm limping. I managed to keep pushing through the woods in the general direction of the logging mill, but found this abandoned radio tower place. Inside, I found some clothing to bandage that scratch, and decided to shack up for the night. I was still determined to get to the logging mill, so in the morning light, I headed off. Unsurprisingly, this patch of woods was also infested. By the time I got to the logging mill, I had quite the conga line. I could do pretty much nothing in the state I was in past just barely outpacing them in a walk. However, this trip wasn't entirely a waste as I managed to snag a packet of potato seeds and even a crowbar, but not much else due to the amount of zomboids trying to eat my brains. Since more and more zomboids were homing in, I decided to bail after a close call and head back to the farmhouse. On the way back, I decided to stop by the northern sheds again. For some unknowable reason, I decided to go in swinging. This was a terrible mistake. In my starving, battered, bleeding, dehydrated, injured, pained, overburdened, and freezing state, I thought it would be a neat idea to try to dispatch the group of zomboids. My hubris was then promptly punished. While trying to bottleneck zomboids through a window, I was knocked back and caught by surprise. By some miracle, the tattered jacket I was wearing protected me from a fatal bite, and I got away unscathed. At this point, I snapped back to my senses and made a hasty retreat back to the farmhouse. I had potatoes that needed planting. So, farming. Pretty simple. You dig up dirt, you put seeds in it, and you water it. Before long, boom. Food. Pretty amazing, right? Well, the catch is, if you don't have a shovel or a trowel or something to dig with, you can only do it by hand. Doing this by hand is not effective, since after a bit your hands hurt and you can't dig anymore. We're still able to make a few furrows by hand and plant a few potatoes, but we'd really need a tool to do anything serious. To make matters worse, we had a hoe, which I broke over a zomboid's head and then left at the northern sheds, like an ignoramus. Alright, so we head back over to the northern sheds, and yes, we did in fact leave it here, and also yes, it's broken. Certainly we can just repair it with a stick or nope. It needs glue or tape, which we don't have. Shit. In short, we're fucked. In long, we're colossally fucked. To explain, we're completely out of supplies. Those potatoes are going to take at least a few weeks to grow, long after we've skeletoned. The last food I ate was these 2 worms I found while digging the potato patch with my hands. Which gives me an idea. A terrible, pathetic, nasty idea. We need to dig up more worms, otherwise we're going to starve. But we don't have a tool, as the hoe is broken. There is one single hope, one glimmer of light that we can grab onto to get ourselves out of the situation. On our first run to the logging mill, I very briefly glanced into a crate while being chased by zomboids. In that crate was a garden fork. A garden fork that can dig. Which means worms. So, I started working back towards the logging mill, only to be ambushed in the woods again. But this time, I had a crowbar. Turns out, crowbars are great. I had to return back to the farmhouse though, as I was becoming exhausted, but I felt pretty neat despite it all, having defeated 39 zomboids. A nifty feat with this avatar of gelatin. It did cause a small question to pop into my head. Do zomboids respawn? I didn't have long to think about it, since once I got back to the farmhouse to rest, a conclusive sign of life occurred. The sounds of a helicopter soaring in the air. Having not seen anyone else that wasn't trying to bite me, I was pretty eager to try to get a look at it, but I could only hear it. Then, it hit me. They would also hear it. Before long, I saw movement. Groups of zomboids stirred up by the helicopter. I had to hide inside, but I heard them break into the first floor. I don't know if they know I'm here, but I couldn't stay up here forever. The helicopter would eventually leave, but the zomboids wouldn't. To make matters worse, I am withering away from hunger. We head downstairs to get an idea of the situation, and it's not great. There's a decent amount of zomboids hanging around, and they've already done some damage. Well, it's time to put this crowbar to use. We managed to clear the immediate area and headed back upstairs to take a nap to recover from the fight. Once we woke up, it was clear how bad things were. I was reaching a breaking point. I'm starving, my safe house is compromised, and I may be worse off than when I started. I had to act now, and immediately set off to get that garden fork. The helicopter had seriously stirred up the horde, and the entire forest was alive with them. An unknowable number of zomboids ahead, and starvation behind, I had to push forward. With determination and a good amount of panic, I managed to push through and reach the radio station. I had to take a short nap to recover from the trip, then set off to the lumber mill. Pushing through yet another patch of woods, I finally arrived back at the mill and found that the zomboids that we had left in the warehouses were gone. Perhaps a silver lining of that helicopter flyover. I was able to nab the garden fork, but wanted to try my luck at finding more seeds. It didn't take long before they heard me search around the warehouse, and I was quickly forced to retreat. I ran into the neighboring warehouse, and there it was. A pack of cabbage seeds. I nearly died trying to grab them, but they were in the bag. With garden fork and seeds at hand, I rushed back to the radio station. I had to start digging as soon as I could, and get those seeds planted. At long last, I feasted. I feasted upon wiggly worms, and I was saved. This marks a very long and pathetic arc of my existence. Olin Ridgway, having faced the many trials of Knox County, no longer wished to be a man of gelatin, but one of perfectly average. For roughly the next month, we stayed in the radio station. Powered by worms with the occasional festivities of cabbage, we began the burpee grind set, determined to become average. Over time, we became stronger, fitter, and closer to the 50th percentile. While we were nearing our milestone, my mind began to wander onto the past. What had happened to our safe house of old, the farmhouse? I decided to break up the monotony of worms and burpees and set out on a small trip to see what had become of the place, and maybe grab those potatoes I left, or at least the seeds I didn't use. After a short jaunt through the woods, we returned to the farmhouse to find that our poor potatoes had withered away. There's also a few zomboids here, with one guarding the seeds I left. I boink it, grab the seeds, and then clear out the rest. Afterwards, while searching through the farmhouse for anything else to take back with us, I remembered an old question. Do zomboids respawn? This time around, I was able to think about it. Turns out, they do. And in a pretty weird way too. With this knowledge, I decided to disable the respawns with this nifty mod tool that can edit settings. With that matter sorted, I headed back to the radio station. There were worms to dig and burpees to do. After more than a month of digging up worms, I had exhausted the dirt inside the fence of the radio station. My digging had to spill over to the outside of the radio station along the fence and road. My exercises were coming along well, as the burpees had finally carried me over to level 5 of strength. Just needed to get to level 5 fitness, and then we'd be perfectly normal. Worms were still my only stable source of food, and as long as I had dirt to dig, I wasn't going to suffer from the short term, though I was still losing a significant amount of weight. Turns out, worms are quite the diet food. This wasn't going to be a problem, at least not yet, but what was going to be a problem was that I was slowly running out of water. This entire time that I had been staying at the radio station, I had been drinking out of this office water tank to stay hydrated. After about a month of drinking from it, it was starting to run low. I did not want to have a repeat of the food situation, so I started considering my options. I could try to build some rain catchers to gather rainwater, or find a lake or a pond to drink from, but I would have to purify the water somehow. Doing so is a lot of effort and takes some sort of fuel at least. Not the best option. Then, I remembered that there were several water tanks back at the logging mill, and if I could grab one, we'd be good for a while. Thus, a plan was hatched. So, the plan. We're hereish, and the lumber mill is therish, but the patch of woods between hereish and therish is infested with zomboids, and I would need a safe enough path to carry the water tank back, since it was pretty hefty. I was pretty eager to put our new strength to the test as well, so it's time to start clearing a path between the radio station and the logging mill. The first group of zomboids we encounter, I tried poking with some spears I had crafted. Turns out, they break easily, and we're back to boinking zomboids with a crowbar. Our efforts were rewarded, as one of the zomboids had a satchel, which is a great improvement over the trash bag I had been using to carry stuff. We boink a few more zomboids, but I got tired and headed back to the radio station for some rest. On our return, we're greeted by cabbages ready for harvest. They'll give us ample energy to clear the path and help stretch our remaining water supply out too. After a night's rest, we're right back out boinking zomboids. And this time it turns out that one of them must have been a police officer and was still carrying a shotgun. Well, now it's my shotgun. No shells, but it's a sign of things to come. After a few days of slowly but surely inching towards the lumber mill, I had cleared a safe enough path to carry the water tank through. Now the final hurdle is getting at least some ground in the lumber mill. Surprisingly enough, while there was still a significant presence at the mill, most of them were further away from the warehouses, and I was able to pick off enough of them to gain partial control of the northern warehouses and secured a back room that I could nap in. I even found this welding mask, which could be useful in this packet of carrot seeds. After a quick look around the warehouses and checking to see if the coast was clear, I grabbed a water tank and started heading back to the radio station. My safe enough path was just that, safe enough. There were a few zomboids on the outskirts of the warehouses, which I dealt with by dropping the water tank and boinking them. The rest of the path was zomboid free, but I started getting really tired about midway through and decided to shelter in the shipping crate and take a quick nap. After that, we finally made it back to the radio station and set down the water tank. I was once again good on water, and to celebrate, I planted those carrot seeds. I was pretty happy about that since we now had carrots, cabbages, and potatoes growing. With the water problem solved, we returned to our daily routine of burpees and gouging ourselves in cabbages when we can harvest them, otherwise scraping by on a diet of worms. On the 13th day of the second month of our survival, we reached our milestone. We were 5 in fitness, 5 in strength. We had achieved perfectly average. No longer was Olin Ridgway a man of gelatin, but a man of normality. To celebrate, we dug for worms because we ran out of cabbages again. With averageness achieved, it was time to aim higher. While things were pretty, okay, we were doing a lot better than when we started. But things could be better, and I was getting tired of eating worms. So, it's decided. Let's gain control of the lumber mill and set up a fully fledged base there. It's a big place, and there's going to be zomboids, but it would be worth it. The strategy is to clear the main area, as well as the surrounding woods and side roads. Bees were infested as well, and the zomboids there would wander back into the logging mill eventually, if left unchecked. The tactic would be to slowly pick off groups, drawing them through the warehouses and hallways to divide and separate them into manageable numbers, then boink them with an assortment of makeshift weaponry. If we got tired or hungry, we'd be able to retreat back to the radio station since we had already cleared a safe enough path to the logging mill. With the plans drawn, it's time to get boinking. Over the next couple of days, we put a good dent in the Zomboid presence in the northern section of the logging mill. I decided to shift my focus to the side road connecting the radio station to the logging mill with hopes of clearing a more direct route to the mill. Compared to the lumber mill, the roads were overrun. I had noticed that the lumber mill seemed a little sparse, and it seems the zomboids had backed up in the roads and surrounding woods. Perhaps a side effect of that helicopter. At least I found this duffel bag on one of the zomboids, which was quite nice for carrying more stuff. After spending about a day and a half boinking zomboids on the road, we had gained all of 5 feet. Every time I felt like I was making progress, another big group of zomboids would emerge from the trees, putting us right back to square one. Since clearing the roads was proving futile for now, I returned my focus back onto the lumber mill. While fighting through the warehouse, I found a sledgehammer. This is a pretty big deal since I could use it to destroy objects like walls or barriers that you normally wouldn't be able to. Not long after that, I had cleared enough of the zomboid presence to set up a secure area in one of the back rooms of the main warehouses. And I even set up a snazzy armchair to snooze in. Refreshed from our nap, we started the last leg of clearing. We still had the other main warehouse to clear, as well as the parking lot and the road around it. At this point, I'm feeling pretty strong, but quickly got a lovely reminder of why that's a bad idea. Thankfully, I managed to note my way out of that situation without getting a hug, and boinked the zomboids responsible with our trusty crowbar. Not long after that, we had emptied the warehouse of zomboids, dealt with a few outside, and it was done. After a few days of clearing, we had gained control of the lumber mill. There was still the occasional group of stragglers, but the interiors were secured and I could start to set up a natural base. To celebrate, I built a pile of stuff. Stuff being assorted weapons and firearms next to my snazzy armchair. Still no ammo, but we'd get around to that soon. I headed back to the radio station to move some stuff to the lumber mill, as well as to check on my crops, which were not quite ready yet. I returned back to the mill and decided to explore around the area a bit. There was a parking lot with quite a few cars, though none of them started, a lumber yard with a bunch of, well, lumber, and not much else past a few wrecked cars and the ever-present zomboids. With the mill secured, I decided that my first innovation would be to set up a garden, but I wanted it to be somewhere I knew zomboids couldn't get to. If they walk over the plants, zomboids would trample and destroy them, so building a roof garden would be a neat idea. But how do I get up? I can't build a ladder, and stairs are way out of my skill level, so remember that sledgehammer? I can go up this catwalk, smash out this wall, and build a bridge over to the warehouse. It's a little dangerous, and it took a bunch of wood, but we got it built, and it works pretty well. Even better, I can punch a hole in the roof, build a fence side, and attach a rope to go up and down easily. Marvelous, really. I'd still have to move the dirt up, which isn't much more than putting it in a sack, carrying it up, and then dumping it out. Before I planted any seeds, I decided to go back to the radio station to check on the crops again, only to my dismay to find that the potatoes had wilted and the cabbages were still not ready for harvest. A bit of a waste of time, but no biggie. I take a short rest and head back to the mill, only to be interrupted by something rather concerning. A zomboid, then several, then more. This was very unusual, as I've never seen zomboids here, even after more than a month of being here. A bad omen if I've ever seen one. It was starting to get late, so I hurried back to the lumber mill and slept for the night. In the morning, I was met with an unexpected zomboid presence around the northern part of the mill, towards the radio station. My best guess is something must have happened and riled up the zombies in that direction, but for now I had my garden to work on. Back on the rooftop of the mill, I planted some tomato seeds that I had found and plopped some more dirt down. It wasn't much, but at least zomboids couldn't trample them and I could expand it more later. I was pretty concerned about the situation around the radio station. I was back to digging worms again, and I wanted those cabbages. I needed to get back there, figure out how bad things were, and then move to secure those tasty cabbages. I started to head back to the radio station, only to find that my previously safe trails were crawling with zomboids, and it took most of the day to clear them out again. The next day I was able to actually get to the radio station, and yeah, it's pretty grim. In what was previously clear woodland around the radio station, several groups of zomboids roamed. There were even a few groups inside the radio station fence, and I was pretty worried about the cabbages. I didn't want a repeat of the farmhouse. I had to push back the horde and reclaim the radio station. After most of the day, they had cleared enough to step inside the fence and lay eyes on the crops. They had trampled some of the cabbages, but most of it was still good. The carrots were ready to harvest and would power us for the next few days, as we were nowhere near done. The cabbages still had a few days to grow, and I wanted to hold down here until they were ready, but the entire area surrounding the radio station was infested. To keep the cabbages safe from trampling, we'd have to face our biggest fight yet. Keep the horde out of the radio station. In this case, offense would be the best defense, so I sallied out to push back the horde. Day after day, the horde was unrelenting, but so was I, and the cabbages were safe. After almost a week of constant fighting, the cabbages were ready for harvest and would become seed-bearing in only a few more days. I allowed myself a few cabbages to sate my hunger, and reinvigorated, continued to battle the horde. I had thoroughly cleared the area around the radio station, and had even pushed as far as a highway in my assaults. Finally, after slaying hundreds of zomboids, the cabbages were fully grown and seed-bearing, and it was cabbage for breakfast. With all my recent clearing efforts, the area around the lumber mill and radio station was becoming much safer to travel in. Side roads I previously wouldn't dare to travel down were becoming safe. While exploring one, I found some car wrecks. Most didn't have anything too interesting or useful, but this red van was an outlier. It's busted up, but it had a full tank of gas, as well as a locked trunk I was able to pry open with a crowbar. Inside was a fully charged car battery. Now this was a big find. The reason that none of the cars back at the lumber mill started was mostly because they had flat batteries, which is usually extremely difficult to mend. With a fully charged battery though, we could just switch the old ones out and boom, a working car, which is a massive step up from walking. We even had a perfect candidate for the battery back at the lumber mill, a company van that was in almost perfect condition. It had an empty gas tank, but I managed to scavenge just enough gas from the other cars in the parking lot for it to start, switched out the battery, and we had ourselves a working van. The first trip we take is back to that red box truck to siphon its fuel tank to top ours off. We have a working van, a full tank of gas, and an empty trunk. Where do we go? Well, we're going to drive half across the county and finally fix our gun situation. It's time for a road trip to the military surplus. During our drive over, it becomes very clear just how bad the situation is. The roads are almost impassable, thick with zomboids, and driving around them sometimes proves impossible, my extremely bad driving skills aside. Even worse, once we get to our destination, it's clear the entire site is overflowing with zomboids. So how the hell are we even going to get inside? Well, we can lure them away from the military surplus by going honk honk in the van. This works pretty well, and after dealing with a few still loitering about, we get inside. That is a lot of guns. Man, I love Kentucky. After stuffing our van with as much ammo and guns as it could hold, as well as filling our own brag to the brim, we head back to the lumber mill with our treasure. Back home, I built a pile of DACA. We had gotten, along with several other munition types, 4 ammo cases of 12 gauge, which each hold 10 ammo boxes, which then each hold 25 shells, for a total of 1,000 shotgun shells. Oh yeah, now we're talking. This was a pretty good amount of ammo, and exactly what we needed to get started on the next extremely violent arc of our existence. Simply put, I wanted things like a generator, a fridge, and a TV. To get that, we need to get access to a town, and the local one was Muldrow, which was absolutely swamped with zomboids. This is where the pile of munitions we got comes into play. Firearms don't take stamina, have range, and can usually take out zomboids in one hit, especially shotguns. The major downsides is ammo is limited, and good lord are the guns loud. Every zomboid in a mile radius is going to hear them. For us though, this was a good thing. I wanted them to come. Thus, the plan. We're going to start from this section of the highway and push south. The milestone is to get to this area of the road which would connect back to the lumber mill, making getting vehicles out easy. The tactic? Shoot everything. Through both rain and snow, we pushed deeper and deeper down the highway, and finally made it to the outskirts of town. We even managed to pull a new, fancy gun off of one of the zomboids, a semi-automatic, magazine-fed shotgun, which was quite the improvement over the pump action we've been using. Before long, we started to run out of ammo, and I had to retreat back to base, over a highway paved with a now twice dead. On return to the lumber mill, I had some time to think about the results of the assault. We had taken out at least 1,500 zomboids, but that was really just a drop in the bucket. There was at least 10 times more of that amount in the town, but every zomboid counted. The major issues were that I couldn't carry much ammo without becoming overburdened, and I was getting winded moving around the horde. I could go back on the burpee grind, but I had a better idea. So, there's a little trick with exercises. If you hit the sprint button and the exercise button at just the right time, you can start exercising extremely quickly. Well, it's still slow as hell, but it's a lot faster than normally exercising, and it completely fucks your character. You'll become extremely exhausted, extremely fast, have overwhelming agony from the muscle pain, and basically be crippled for the next few days because of it. Oh, I'm also going to strip to my whitey-tighties and do it outside on the roof, for extra pain, Baki style. In the first session of these extreme exercises, I was able to get to 7 in both fitness and strength. Something that would have taken much longer normally, but I was in overwhelming agony and would be for the next few days. I had also run out of food again, since my tomatoes were not quite ready yet, and so I spent my downtime having to dig worms. The second session got us to 8 in both, and this time around I had tomatoes instead of worms. While recovering from the agony, I decided to do some renovations and upgrades, starting with my garden. I doubled the area for growing, and under a light night rain, planted some cabbages. Then, I wanted to build some compost bins, and maybe a fence of some sort, which meant it was time to grind carpentry again by dismantling the crates in the warehouse. By the time that was done, I'd recovered from the agony and decided to get right back to it. However, this session was almost immediately interrupted by the sound of glass breaking. Turns out, some Zomboids wandered back into the area, saw me on the roof, and decided to break inside. This is actually pretty bad, since I am completely wrecked. My best option was a gun, but I was caught lacking and didn't have one with me. I needed to get to the back room where I could arm myself. I managed to drop off the roof, sneak back into the warehouse, grab the Tommy, and even rest a little. Problem is, guns are loud, and I didn't want to draw a horde here. I needed a suppressor, which I could actually make, as I had found an oil filter that could be fashioned into a makeshift one. It was in my backpack, which I had left, on the roof, like an ignoramus. So, I had to sneak back to the roof, dispatch a Zomboid by my access rope, and then quickly fashion a suppressor. With that, I could safely use the gun and dispatch my intruders. Crisis averted, but they destroyed one of the garage doors to the warehouse. After blocking off the destroyed garage door, I got back on that carpentry grind and kept working on my garden fence until the agony wears off. Oh, and still digging worms. By the time of our 4th session, we managed to get to level 9 in strength and fitness, which is quite nice, meaning that we were officially strong and fit. With this round of agony-related downtime, I cleared out the warehouse bay interior that was outside the back room I was sleeping in. I was planning on converting this area into a usable space for things like a kitchen or a living space. For now, I just moved a few tables and a couch over. At last, our final session of extreme exercises. We will finally be at max fitness and strength after this. Wait, why does the number no go up? Turns out, all of that exercise mixed with a diet of worms and occasional vegetables had wrecked our weight, and being underweight prevented us from getting to level 10. Shucks. Well, that means we have to wait until the next harvest to bulk up, so we have more time on our hands. After a mixture of chilling out in our new living space, grinding some carpentry, and planking some wandering Zomboids, I decided to go and inspect the area we had cleared since it had been some weeks since then, and maybe try out some of the other guns since my skill had massively improved. Man, that was a serious mistake. After getting back to the highway, I found a horde that was bigger than the last time. I ended up getting cut off from the van and had to flee through the woods. Even worse, once I got back, I noticed a whole bunch of Zomboids had wandered into the mill, likely since I was stirring them up with gunshots. I spent the next morning clearing them out again. After dealing with that situation, I was eager to finish the exercises, and the moment I got to normal weight, I went right back at them. However, once again, our session is interrupted by breaking glass. No problem. I remember my big iron this time and dispatched the intruders with ease. They broke my other garage door, as well as 2 normal doors, and in the morning I had to repair them. I was pretty dang tired of Zomboids interrupting my sessions, so I spent a day running around, luring out any would-be invaders. Finally, and this time for real, was our last session, and we were able to reach our physical peak. No longer a man of gelatin or averageness, Olin Ridgway was a man of muscle. After resting off the agony for the final time, I was eager to test out my strength and went headfirst with crowbar in hand. It was glorious. We were a powerhouse, able to dispatch several dozen Zomboids without becoming exhausted. It was time to get back to the task of clearing the Muldrow Highway, this time with blade and blunt. This time around we would start from the side road. Drawing the attention of the main horde. Then doubling back to the original strip of highway and pushing down. There, we had our first break in the Wall of the Undead and gained access to a warehouse that would provide materials needed to repair our weapons. We pushed further, accessing a quiet neighborhood that didn't have that many Zomboids. One of the houses in this neighborhood had a yard shed, and inside of it was a generator. Now we just needed a magazine to operate it. Before long, we had ventured deep along the highway into Muldrow, breaking through to the local spiffos. I even found some plushes inside, but I couldn't take them since my bag was full. Don't worry, we're gonna come back for them. This far into town, the horde was getting stronger with every step. We needed a shot in the arm, so it was time to head back to the military surplus for some extra firepower. First, I needed to recover the van, which I had left on that side road a while ago. Thankfully, it's still where we left it since Zomboids can't drive, and after clearing a few more groups of Zomboids, we got it back to the mill. It was pretty busted up from all the Zomboids, and totally not my bad driving. Well, back on the road to the military surplus. This time around, we pulled out a light machine gun chambered in 7.62 by 54R, and a couple of cases of ammo for it. I even grabbed a military rig for extra storage, and this gas mask to help with the stinky corpse sickness. Unfortunately, the van has lost some capacity from being so busted up, but we still get a good haul. Since we're out here, I decided to go the extra mile and check out another potential spot for some guns, a gun store that was a little bit further out west. It should only be a short ride through some back roads, which were cramped, infested with Zomboids, and blocked with wrecks. Not good. With the van being even more busted up from that mistake, we get to the gun store to find that it's infested, basically empty, and a waste of time. With that, we left, deciding to return back to the lumber mill on the main highway, which was only slightly better than the back roads. Just before town, we hit a major pileup on our crossroads. I decided to check this out and even found a working car in the wrecks. Nice. After fiddling around with some of the wrecks, I decided to start setting up the LMG. It has a big, bulky, 100-round box magazine, and should prove very effective on the horde. After a quick nap in the van, we drive into town, get the Zomboid's attention, and start unloading. After mowing through hundreds of Zomboids, we broke through to the town's police department and got into the armory, which was empty. Shit. I was running out of locations to find ammo in, so what we have now is pretty much all we got. At the very least, the bookstore next door was stocked, and we got a bunch of reading material that would boost our skills. After finishing off the last of the LMG ammo, we headed back to the lumber mill and offloaded what munitions we had left. It was several long days of hard fighting, so some recovery time was needed. I read some of the books from the bookstore, and after that, I decided to fully furnish the roof garden and did a large expansion. I now had lots of room for growing. I even tinkered a bit on some of the cars in the parking lot to learn about mechanics, but got distracted by the ideas of making rain catchers. I could place some on the roof and then plumb them to a sink below for running water. And with a carpentry book, it would be easier than ever to learn how. However, I was fresh out of crates in the warehouse, so I headed back to the warehouse on the outskirts of Muldrow. It was actually pretty clear of Zomboids too, showing that my efforts were actually paying off. Once I had finished grinding carpentry in the warehouse, I decided for a stroll through town. It was actually pretty clear on the outskirts, and I was able to check inside some of the buildings like this garage, which I noticed had another car battery. This could be pretty useful, since I noticed an abandoned military cargo truck further into town I could use this for. I even managed to get back to the Spiffos and rescue the plushies. However, further into town, there were still plenty of Zomboids, and I ended up spending a few extra days clearing. Which was a fantastic decision, since we found two very important items. Firstly, we found a very promising annotated map, marking a location in a town called Martridge, suggesting that there were survivors there. Survivors! Other living people! I had to check this place out, but the van was pretty busted, and the highway was still pretty thick with Zomboids, and gas was starting to become a problem. Well, I kept pressing on, and while checking this bank building, I found our second important item, the generator book. With this, I could actually operate generators, and we'd have a source of electricity for appliances. I even knew where a generator was already. With this, I started to hatch a new plan. Alright, the plan. We need to get to March Ridge, and we need new wheels. So, I get that battery from the garage, take it to the cargo truck, and then drive it over to the gas station in the middle of town. I'll need to secure the gas station and get the generator over here, but I needed to head back to the lumber mill to check on things. Once I got back, I found a pretty staggering amount of Zomboids hanging around, even after all of the clearing. It's a bit odd, but I suppose it's because of all the noise. Either way, I dispatch them and get inside for some rest, only to find more Zomboids in the morning. Well, at least I finally get those rain catchers built, and at a great time since it's raining. I even got that sink plumbed as well, so the running water is finally here. With the water set up, and if I manage crop rotation just right, I may never need to leave the base again, since the needs of food, water, and shelter were all met. I even had friends. Well, plushes, but you work with what you got. Anyway, after cleaning a few more Zomboids out around the mill, we got back to work on the plan. We were going to take the van and pick up the generator and get it moved to the gas station. Once there, we plop it down, gas it up, and turn it on. The noise would attract more Zomboids, but we were able to handle them with ease. And before long, we had secured the gas station well enough to gas up that cargo truck. Once that was done, we drive the truck back to the mill and tow the van behind us. Back at base, I slept for the night and then checked our rain catchers, which were full. For the first time in months, I had the luxury of a bath. A hobo sink bath, but we were clean. This wouldn't last for long since we were headed for Martridge. I didn't know what to expect, past assuming there's going to be shitloads of Zomboids, so I took the van instead of the cargo truck. The drive there was short, since Martridge was a lot closer than I expected. Oh yeah, there was shitloads of Zomboids, and we were not even past the front gate. On top of that, a creepy fog rolled in. But it didn't stop us from getting past the gate into the outskirts of the actual town. We were only stopped by running out of repair materials for our weapon. I needed to source some more before we could continue, maybe out of the warehouses back in Muldrow. So, I retreated back to the van and drove back to town. While driving back into Muldrow, I noticed I really hadn't checked this side of town, and I found a gas station and a diner. Outside of the diner was another van, which was in much better shape than ours. I switched out the battery and boom, we had replaced our old busted up van. I swung by the gas station with the generator to gas it up, then started checking out the warehouses in town. We did find some duct tape for repairs. Not much, but it would have to do. It's time to head back to March Ridge, and this time, we're not going to leave until we get to those survivors. Cutting through the horde, we finally reached our destination, only to find the place overrun on the outside. We managed to sneak inside to find that the entire place is silent, abandoned, and oddly clean. There's no hint of anyone ever being here, nor any signs of a struggle. Why would there be a map telling me to come here? Where is everyone? While there's no sign of human life, there is an absolute arsenal of weapons here. It seems whoever was here mysteriously left stashes of weapons and munitions in every one of these apartments. While the paranoia of missing people was starting to get to me, I could at least silence the voices with all of these guns. Oh, and use them to clear up the Zomboids and secure this area for the cargo truck. Better get started. We armed ourselves with an automatic shotgun and LMG, and rung the dinner bell. They came from all sides. Tens. Then hundreds. Then thousands. The hammer of the horde was coming down, and we were the nail. Though massively outnumbered, with the aid of the March Ridge arsenal, we were able to withstand the horde and clear a path back to the van. I needed to bring the cargo truck here, so I hopped back in the van and returned to the lumber mill to get it. On the way back to March Ridge with the truck, we passed by that pile up again and noticed a big military trailer which we were able to tow with the truck. This pretty much doubled our hauling capacity. Believe me, we were going to need it. We returned to March Ridge, and driving over a road paved to the Twice Dead, parked the cargo truck in front of the apartments, a monolith of our determination. It was time for Operation Holloway. Fill up the cargo truck and its trailer with as much guns, ammo, and supplies that we can stuff into it. Before long, the truck bed was filled to the brim, then the trailer. It was just enough space to get almost all the supplies here, and was the largest haul of loot I've ever seen. With the truck and trailer heavy with loot, we drove victorious back through town. I even made a slight detour to this video store and grabbed a TV and as many tapes as I could carry. Once we got back to the lumber mill, I decided to park the truck inside the cleared out bay. I dumped the tapes in the living area and placed our new TV. I even moved the fridge over from the cafeteria area. I didn't actually have any electricity to turn them on with, so I headed back to our gas station and moved the generator over to the mill. I also slapped a sheet on this window and put up some boards in case any zomboids decided to show up because of the sound. With that set up, we had power, a TV, and a fridge. All the things on our list. I guess it's time to unload the truck and trailer, but we need to put it somewhere. So, let's build some storage. I decided to be fancy and build a bunch of tables for the guns and ammo, and move a few shelves over for any loose bullets. I ended up getting distracted though, since I wanted some kind of fireplace. There's actually a nearby cabin I had noticed earlier with a wood stove, which is good enough for me. So, I headed over to grab it and haul it back. Things were really coming together. Alright. Enough screwing around. Time to actually get unloading. Behold, my pile of stuff. Dozens of guns, thousands of rounds of ammo of various types, as well as a pantry full of non-perishables. We had a generator for electricity, a fridge for food preservation, a network of rain catchers for running water, a flourishing rooftop garden, and 500 cigarettes. Oh, and we had friends, as well as enough movies to keep us occupied for a while. For now, our story ends here. Project Zomboid is one of the most, if not the most, ambitious zombie games on the market, and it has a lot of bite for its bark. With a release of Build 42 unstable, and perhaps soon a release with multiplayer enabled or even a stable version, it's closer than ever to its final vision. It's readily available for purchase on Steam at a reasonable price point, and it participates in sales often. It even has a massive modding community, though most mods may not be compatible with the latest unstable versions. Anyway, sorry for the massive delay in making this one, and as always, thank you for watching. Wait, where am I now? Is this a dump? You know what? I can work with this.